Hey y'all, Adam Sandoval here, gonna give you my top 3 modifications I would make to a Harley Davidson if I had gotten a stock used or a brand new bike off the showroom floor. So this is a 2017 Road King Special that I had highly modified for my wife. So as you can see, I like to customize motorcycles, but the thing I'm gonna talk about today are not necessarily high speed modifications like this badass FXRT fairing you see on here. I'm gonna talk more about the performance of the motorcycle because that's what matters to me most. So first things I look for are things that are gonna improve the performance of my machine. Now these modifications I'm gonna give you in no particular order, and if you stay tuned to the end, I'll give you my number 4 go-to modification on a new bike. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is suspension. Rear suspension may be one of the things that needs the absolute most attention when you're talking about new Harley Davidsons. And the reason for this is pretty simple. You look at the design of the rear suspension on the Harley Davidson, it really hasn't changed a lot since the 50s. The angle in which they've attached the shocks have changed, and of course the quality of suspension that they've used has changed, but the design itself has remained the same. One shock on either side of the rear tire. This design Harley Davidson's been using since the 50s is a rear wheel, a shock on either side like this. And what happens is when you start leaning that motorcycle side to side, one of those shocks has got to create some sort of bind. It's the reason you see a monoshock in so many super bikes and other motorcycles out there that are high performance racing bikes. They don't run 2 rear shocks. Dirt bikes are the same way. They run one monoshock in the middle so that when the bike turns, that shock leans with the bike and it creates less binding. Now, my go-to company to modify these shocks and to get them performing the best they possibly can is Legend Suspension. These are the Revo Arcs, they're remote reservoir. I can tune my dampening and my rebound right on the shocks themselves with a quick click in one direction or the next. And this allows me to adjust my rear suspension whether I've got a load on the back or whether I'm riding solo. Now, as I show you this, keep in mind, I am big on performance modifications of my motorcycles. I'm not so big on cleaning and polishing. I ride my bikes, I don't really show my bikes. So besides being an all made in America shock, Legend Suspension also puts some spherical bearings inside these areas where it connects to your frame. And these bearings in here allow the shock to shift and pivot just a little bit when you're leaning this bike down into a corner, which really helps it set up. Performance is always at the top of my mind when upgrading a Harley Davidson, because if I'm gonna be taking this thing on long road trips, performance and comfort are key, but performance isn't always horsepower, and you see that when it comes to suspension. My next upgrade tip is going to be horsepower related for sure. That, my friends, is the exhaust system. Harley Davidson and all the other manufacturers are so regulated on what they can and cannot do as far as emissions when producing new motorcycles. Meeting these emissions requirements means robbing the bike of its horsepower, its torque, truly its performance. So when it comes to exhaust, one of my favorite ones to go with is the D&D exhaust. For one, it's veteran owned. 2, it's made in America. And 3, the exhaust just sounds phenomenal. Endless exhaust companies out there you can choose from, and really all of them make a fairly good product. I just like D&D because A, I think the owner's a rad dude. He's a badass American Marine veteran. B, he makes all of his products right here in America. I'm talking down to even machining his own bolts and hardware. Before I start this thing up, keep in mind, you're only gonna be able to hear the sound as good as your speakers are on the device you're listening. This is always a tough one to relay to people over the internet, but check it out. Check it out. And D&D exhaust spends a lot of time focusing on the performance of the pipe, not just the sound, but they also put a ton of effort into R&D to make sure that pipe is performing the best in torque and horsepower. The third modification that I would do right away upon getting a new Harley Davidson is going to be the handlebars. Having proper posture while you're riding your motorcycle can be just as important as any other aspect of the bike. Way too often I see guys that are leaning way forward, straining their lower back to reach their handlebars, stretching across the tank, or a lot of times even leaning too far back with their arms up too high or down too low. For me, getting that arm right below the shoulder, arm straight out, is the best and most comfortable riding position. It relieves any shoulder pain I used to experience. So I like to go with a T-bar setup. The T-bar setup I put on Ashley's bike is just a set of risers that go down, and then more of like a dirt bike style bar up on top. Now this set here isn't one you can buy online. It's a custom ASR setup, an Adam Sandoval setup I made for my wife's bike. Fabbed up these bars and these risers, but there are a lot of great companies out there like Kraus Moto and Fly Moto that can make you a set of risers and a set of bars that will get your hands in the proper position and make you so much more comfortable on those long rides. As promised, I'm going to give you one more thing that I would change right away on a motorcycle if I got it. And that, my friends, is the seat. The seats from the factory are super, super soft to the touch. And they do that because you walk through the showroom floor and you go, oh, that's a nice, soft, cushy seat. But what happens is 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 miles down the road, that soft seat leaves you squished down and sitting on the bike's seat pan, and it's completely uncomfortable. So getting a seat with a little bit stiffer foam may not feel as enticing to the touch, but on a long ride, it's going to keep you off of that seat pan and absorb those vibrations and make it much more comfortable going down the road. The seat I've got on Ashley's bike here is made by a little company out in California called JP Customs. I custom made this with them. I went to their shop and visited them and handmade it for Ashley. So this isn't one you can buy online or anything like that, similar to my handlebars, but nonetheless, getting a good custom made seat, whatever company you choose to go with, is going to make a big difference on the ride. So there you go, y'all. The top 3 things plus one that I would change on a new or used stock motorcycle right away. I hope y'all enjoyed that. If you got any other things that you think prioritize over this, let me know down in the comments below. I know we got a wealth of knowledge on riding out there, and I'm sure people will appreciate to hear your input too.